Joining us this week for the Wednesday Bookmark is Mary Marantz. Mary is host of the popular podcast, The Mary Marantz Show. She was the first in her family to go to college before going on to Yale for law school. She and her husband, Justin, live in an 1880s fixer-upper by the sea in New Haven, Connecticut. Sounds glorious. We're going to talk this morning about Mary's book, Underestimated, the surprisingly simple shift to quit playing small, name the fear, and move forward anyway. Mary, thanks so much for your time this morning.
Oh my gosh, Brock, thanks for being here, and come sit on the porch by the sea anytime you want.
I'm coming.
Yeah.
Mary, you say that even from a very young age, you knew that you were meant for more. Mm-hmm. Let's begin with your childhood. Where do you think that knowing came from?
Yeah, Brock, for everybody listening, if this is their first time meeting me, sort of the elevator pitch version of my story, or the kind of like movie trailer version, we've seen this movie before, is that I grew up in a very truly single wide trailer in rural West Virginia. And I always like to emphasize that single wide trailer part, because sometimes people think of a really nice double wide with like a permanent foundation, flowers, planted outside. Whatever stock photo you have in your head of dilapidated trailer in Appalachia, that would be it. If you want to go to thebookdirt.com, you can actually see the cover of my first book, Dirt, and that is the actual trailer I grew up in. My husband took the photo, Justin, he took it the first time I took him home to meet my family. And so single wide, tin can of a trailer, the roof leaked, the ceiling was caving in, the rain poured in. That meant the floor started to cave in. We had mushrooms growing in the carpet. We had stray animals who would go inside just as much as they go outside. My dad would track home mud in his logging boots. So I said, I don't know where the brown shag carpeting ended and dirt began. And so you fast forward, like you said, in my story, and we go to Yale for law school. And it's like, I have been in many ways practicing this underestimated underdog story my entire life. And yeah, it is just this thing that growing up without a lot does something to your brain. It makes you expect to fail before you even start. So that's really kind of the heart where this book comes from.
All or nothing thinking keeps us in what you call the motivation defeat cycle. Talk about that cycle.
Yes, I've lived this cycle so much of my life. So it goes a little something like this. You get a glimpse of what you were created for. Going back to your previous question about feeling like you were meant for more. It's never kind of this like superiority, I'm better than somebody else, or I'm better than this. It's more like you can't explain it. You feel like from a very young age or at some point in your life, you just got this feeling that you were being called up to something, while at the same time feeling like someone like you will never be able to get there. So I've been saying this book is for the person who feels like they're being called to more, and you simultaneously doubt someone like you and your story would ever get there. And so, it really just becomes kind of this pattern that we repeat. Motivation and defeat cycle looks a little something like, I see where I'm being called. I see where I'm headed. I see my gifts and all the things that it could be. So I set out to do it perfectly. I never, ever want to make a single mistake, because if I make a single mistake, it's just going to confirm all the lies in my head that say, I don't have what it takes. I'm not meant to do it. Inevitably mess up anyway, start to get defeated, say this is never going to help anybody. What does it matter? It's all been done. It's all been done better. It's all been done by somebody the world actually cares about. Give up, go a few months, and then realize what it could be again, and the cycle repeats itself. And so it becomes this very kind of, I've joked, sort of a Paula Abdul approach to goal chasing, 2 steps forward, 2 steps back, in her very confusing semi-serious relationship with a cartoon cat, right? We're not sure why she did that. And we're not sure why we do this, why we keep starting over. We push this boulder all the way up to the mountain, almost to our breakthrough moment. And at the last minute, we blink and we lose our grip and we lose our way. And the boulder rolls all the way back down the mountain.
Our younger listeners are like, who's Paula Abdul?
You know what? I'm going to be honest with you. There's this whole theory in marketing about attract and repel. And it's like, at this point, child of the 80s, I'm about to turn 45. I'm not repelling younger listeners by any means, but do your homework. You need to know this cultural phenomenon.
I like it.
That is Paula Abdul.
I like that. Conventional wisdom says to quit playing small, we have to go big. But you suggest that, ironically, we quit playing small by starting small. How does that work?
Yeah, so here's the easiest example. We would not go to the gym once and think we were in shape. We would not go to the gym once and think we are a gym rat, right? But so I read an article once that said the smartest ideas, the best ideas are a switch, not a dial. They find a way to flip the thinking we've been having on its head rather than just turning the volume up. And so traditional wisdom to quit playing small is just sort of that like girl boss Nike approach to doing anything. Just do it. You've got this, right? Swing big, swing for the fences, leap and the net will appear, which is just terrible aeronautics advice. But ironically and paradoxically, while we can go for the go big moments, I'm not saying we stop doing that. I've had a lot of go big moments in my life, Brock. The day I got into Yale, the day I signed a 5-book deal with my publisher, a coast-to-coast speaking tour. But they all felt like things that had happened to me, not something that I was becoming, not something that was, transforming who I was, becoming a very part of my identity. And it is what we do every day that has the power to change our lives most. If you think about setting goals versus setting intentions, a goal you get to celebrate on one day, the day it actually happens. But with intentions, every day you wake up and you say, who do I have to be today in order to stand in the shoes of the person who can one day hold that goal in their hands? Then every day you do that is a day worth celebrating. And so we paradoxically quit playing small by actually starting small.
That's so good. Yeah. Around 15 years ago at a conference, you heard a speaker say, you leaped the first time, but will you leap again the next time the ledge comes back around? What do you think that means? What did it mean to you at the time? And why are you still thinking about that all these years later?
Yeah, that one hurts. I'm not going to lie. I still feel exactly how I felt the sitting in that chair when he said it. So here's what it means to me. At the time that I heard that, I was sitting at a photography conference. So I went all the way to Yale Law School, got my entire Yale Law degree, graduated, and immediately pivoted to become a wedding photographer with my husband, Justin, which is a really expensive way of doing that. I don't recommend it.
Right.
And so I knew what it was once to leap, believing the net would appear, to choose the road less traveled, right? I knew what it was to say, I have a safe, set, supposed to life stretching out before me on one side, and a totally different path that is all unknowns on the other. And we decided to leap, believing the net would appear, that whole idea. And we stuck the landing, Brock. We built an incredibly successful photography business. I say Cirque du Soleil style. I was caught in a tight wrist lock and swung back up to the highest tightrope of every dream I've been chasing. But then you get older and you get a mortgage and you get bills and you have responsibilities, and you also get really good and comfortable in this nice, good enough life, right? The enemy of great is not bad. It's good enough. And so I had known what it was to continue to sleep on the real dream that I'd had since I was 5 years old of writing books. And another year goes by and the clock goes on ticking and the world is worse for your absence. So I felt very called out in that room of, not only am I a person who's like never been brave, so I don't know how to do it. I know I can do it. I've done it once. And that almost like hurt more.
You were talking a few minutes ago about perfectionism, and you referred to perfectionism as hiding with better PR, which I thought was so interesting. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, so I like to think of it like hiding, which is not a very pretty word. Like we don't go around going, "Hi, I'm Mary. I'm hiding in plain sight." Right? "Hi, I'm Mary. I'm hiding from my biggest dreams." "Hi, I'm Mary. I'm sleeping on all my potential." We don't like to say things like that. But we do love to say, "Oh, I'm just such a perfectionist. Of course I got to work on that book proposal a little longer. Of course I got to tweak that website." We say it like it's not really a bad thing. We think it's like an overachiever thing, an A++ thing, a thing that only those of us who hold ourselves to the highest standards would do. And so I like to imagine that hiding went and hired the same marketing people that cauliflower did when it convinced the world that it was pizza. Like this is a really good Don Draper worthy team here to make that happen. And I joke in the book, not since the Got Milk people has there been an ad campaign that tried to make something so plain Jane vanilla seem so sexy and sought after, as when we tried to convince ourselves that hiding was actually just being a perfectionist, and being a perfectionist is not really that bad of a thing. So, a lot of us are doing that. When I think about the 14 chapters, for everybody listening, every chapter is a different face of fear: perfectionism, procrastination, people pleasing, overthinking, imposter syndrome, even a fear of success, 14 in total. I bet that the number one people would claim is perfectionism, but not even because that's actually what's really keeping them stuck, the thing behind the thing. It's just the one that feels the most palatable to say.
Yeah, so true. Last question, Mary. Many people spend their whole lives in this perpetual survival to success loop that you talk about in the book, but you believe there's a more important step even beyond success, and that's significance. So leave us in that spirit. How do we make the leap from success to significance?
Yeah, so there's something for entrepreneurs in the sort of business space called the, survival to significance loop. That's what it's called. And so when you start a business, you go from starting to barely surviving, then you get a little bit more, and there's a little bit of stability. Then you start to reach some security, and finally, people start calling you a success. So if you imagine some Legos stacked up side by side as like a bar graph, it kind of looks like a mountain that you just keep pushing up the hill, and inevitably you reach the top called significance. And as somebody who's felt overlooked and like underestimated my entire life, there's no place more I wanted to reach than significant. And I thought it was a connected mountain, but a couple years ago, I had this picture flash through my mind like a Don Draper worthy Kodak carousel, whoosh, whoosh, quick, and then it was gone, that said there's actually a gap between the top two, between success and significance. And all those first steps are actually about us, our starting, our survival, our stability, our security, our success, and even the opposite too, the scarcity of it, our embarrassment, our disappointment, our heartbreak, our failure, how other people might hurt us. It's all about this glancing down back at ourselves in this self-conscious, subconscious sort of way that is the blink, and we drop the boulder and it rolls back down the mountain. But if we want to truly make the leap to the other side, where there is this hallowed, spacious ground where we can finally lay down that boulder, it's going to require a running leap. And that leap, the gap in between, I say it's a speed-worthy, finished on the map gap, as it finally stops being about you. Instead of asking what might go wrong, we start asking ourselves, yeah, but who might it help? Because the truth is, we never asked you to be perfect. We just asked you to show up, the use of your gifts, the use of your story in service to others for the rest of your life. That's it.
Yes. Underestimated the surprisingly simple shift to quit playing small, name the fear, and move forward anyway. Mary Marantz, our guest this week for the Wednesday Bookmark. Really thoughtful stuff, Mary. Thanks so much for your time this morning.
Thank you so much. NameTheFear.com. Go check it out. We got a free chapter for you up there.